Jasmine Haynes, and I'm here with Reverend Lisa Garvin, who is joining the Southern Methodist University family to serve as chaplain for the institution. And in addition to her service as chaplain, she is making history by being the first woman to serve in this position. Reverend Garvin, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you, Jasmine. I'm grateful to be with you and to Bishop Swanson and my district superintendent, Stephen Cook, who thought to share this story with the Mississippi Conference. I'm eternally grateful for all the ways in which the Mississippi Methodists have shaped my life and my journey. I would not be who I am and would not be going to SMU had it not been for all the experiences I've had in the Mississippi Conference and all the people of the Mississippi Conference who have shaped and encouraged me.
That is quite a gift, and to be able to say that. And something else that is awesome to be able to say, let me tell you a little bit about Reverend Garvin's background. She is a Hattiesburg native, an ordained deacon in the United Methodist Church, and a graduate with a Master of Divinity from Emory University's Candler School of Theology. She also has a Juris Master, in Human Rights from Emory's School of Law. In addition to that, she holds a bachelor's in European Studies from Millsaps College. So that is a mouthful. And I'm going to breathe and let you do more talking than me. So let me ask you this. You are a Hattiesburg native. Walk us through your ministerial journey from Hattiesburg all the way to heading towards SMU.
I think probably the most important part of my journey that started in Hattiesburg and takes me to SMU now is the fact that I grew up in a university church, Parkway Heights United Methodist in Hattiesburg. A lot of my Sunday school teachers were on faculty or worked at USM in some capacity. And we were always taught growing up at Parkway Heights that critical thinking was an essential part of the life of faith. That the joining of the heart and mind, as John Wesley said. And I didn't really realize it at the time, but I think that is foundational to my calling to university chaplaincy. Some of the other parts of my journey as a young person, really beginning in the 4th grade and all the way through college, I had political aspirations. I never intended to be a clergy person. And I remember telling one of my good friends our junior year in college that I was going to be the best layperson that there had ever been. And I had these aspirations of being the next Twick Morrison, who many folks from the old Mississippi Conference will remember as a lay leader of that conference. But it was around that time, my junior year in college, that I began to have the first inklings that God might be calling me to ordained ministry. But I had this really singular focus, and I sort of fought that with everything that I have. But fast forward about 5 years, Bert Felder hired me as the Christian educator at Crossgates in Brandon. I had completed a year of law school, which was part of that focus I had, and then sort of thought better of it. I'll just say that I spent more time at SEC athletic events and the Wesley Foundation than I did in the law library at that time. But what goes around comes around. So I completed a law degree a couple weeks ago now. 5 years after that, I enrolled at Candler School of Theology at Emory. And I think it was really through the affirmation of the people at Crossgates that God convinced me that ordained ministry was my vocation. And at that time, I really thought that I would return to Mississippi as a Christian educator in a local church. I loved that work. And I loved the local church. But at Emory, I discovered multi-religious chaplaincy through my internship in the Office of Religious Life, which is where I'm working right now. And university worship, I just came to understand that university chaplaincy encompasses so many of my interests and passions. Vocational discernment is at the heart of that. So cultivating and facilitating spaces and experiences where people grow in their understanding of God and of themselves and of the world, and where they figure out what their gifts are and how that they will offer those for good in the world. University chaplaincy also has a focus on religious literacy and multi-religious community. I've always been fascinated with other religions while deeply United Methodist. My aunt married a Jewish man when I was, I think, in junior high, and I was always questioning him about his understanding of God and how he practiced his faith. And so I really enjoyed that aspect of university chaplaincy, of getting to work with people from different traditions and having a fuller understanding of God through the variety of religious traditions. And then the piece that I mentioned about from Parkway Heights days, that joining of the heart and mind. I am fundamentally a United Methodist, and reason and rationality is a critical part of the life of faith in our tradition. But we also recognize that we cannot know everything without a doubt. So faith is also a critical part of knowledge and wisdom in our tradition. And so I feel really fortunate to have had the opportunity to live out this vocation at my two alma maters, Millsaps and Emory, and to now be going to SMU and to connect with a different group of United Methodists and a different part of our connection, a different jurisdiction, a different conference, and to build on the wonderful legacy of religious and spiritual life there at SMU.
I think that is one of the great parts of our connection, that we can easily move and serve the kingdom in so many areas and aspects. So you are going to begin your tenure at SMU October 19th, not too long from now. So what, with all the chaotic things that have been going on in 2020 and some things that are still ongoing, how are you managing to plan a move and stay sane, not just from a physical point of view, but I mean, that is, moving can be mentally and
Yeah,
spiritually
absolutely.
draining. Talk about that.
I landed my dream job in the middle of a pandemic, so I don't really have anything to complain about. But it is sort of the most daunting aspect of this transition, is how do you move in the middle of a pandemic? Um, how do you develop the kind of relationships that are essential to a good and solid ministry? And how do you say goodbye to the people who have been a part of your life, for me now for almost 8 years? Um, the last I don't feel particularly sane right now. The last 2 weeks have been a total whirlwind. The day before SMU called me, I finished the Juris Master degree and was able to say I officially graduated from Emory Law School. The next day they called and made an offer, and we had some conversations and came to a verbal agreement by the end of the day. And then Thursday morning, my 93-year-old grandmother died. And so I left and spent 5 days in Mississippi celebrating her life with my large extended family. And by
Sorry
the
to
time I
hear
got back
that.
to Atlanta, thank you. She lived a long and faithful life. So I'm just glad we could be together in the middle of that. But it certainly added another twist to all that's happening right now. Um, and then I took my 10-year-old niece. I take each of my nieces and nephews on a 10-year-old trip. And my niece turned 10 the following Thursday. And so she and I just spent 3 days in Washington, D.C. um, and so I just got back to Atlanta last night. And now I'm ready to start thinking about what it means to move in the middle of a pandemic. Um, and to say goodbye to friends. I think the primary thing right now is that I'm trying to finish well at Emory, and I'm trying to begin well at SMU. And right now, what that means to me, in some ways, I'm really grateful that we've adapted all these tools to be together virtually, right? That's sort of helping that transition. So I'm spending part of every day connecting with friends here that I will deeply miss, and trying to not say goodbye, but see you later. And then spending part of each day connecting with new friends in Dallas, and trying to figure out what neighborhood I want to live in. And my plan is to call the movers later today or tomorrow, and sort of at least get a timetable. And I'll spend another couple of days in Dallas later in September again to meet some people, to find somewhere to live. and to begin to make that transition. So check back with me on November 1st to see if I'm still sane or not.
Will do. We have lots to check on with you. You have a lot going on. With everything that you have going on and with everything that clearly within your background that you have to bring to this new role, what do you hope to bring to this new role at SMU?
Thanks. That's a really good question. I think the primary thing that I hope to bring to SMU is a vision of university chaplaincy that is deeply rooted in the United Methodist tradition and inclusive of people of every religious tradition. That's the kind of chaplaincy that I've been a part of here at Emory. It's what I'm formed in, and it's, as I've mentioned earlier, it's part of what gets me excited about university chaplaincy. And SMU has expressed a desire to strengthen religious life for Christians as well as for Hindu, Jewish, and Muslim students. Last year, they hired a part-time rabbi and a part-time imam, which I think was indicative of the institutional commitment to a robust multi-religious chaplaincy. And I think that my experience at Emory has prepared me to lead that expansion, while my identity as a United Methodist will root the work in SMU's historic United Methodist identity.
It's pretty historic to have the first woman chaplain. So what does it mean to you? And I would say, what does it mean in the historic context for the university to be the first woman chaplain for SMU?
Yeah, it seems like a pretty big deal for the university. I mean, they put it in the first line of the announcement, and quite honestly, I didn't realize it. I mean, if I'd thought about it, I would have, because I know my two predecessors, and that goes back probably most of my life, definitely most of my life. It goes back at least 30 years, I think. And so, and I can't imagine that there would have been a woman before that, but I didn't realize that that was going to be the case until I saw the formal announcement. And it's got a lot of attention from a lot of folks. And so that feels like a significant responsibility. I remember hearing Vicki Laughlin Johnson, who was on the cabinet at the time, say that she had never had a female boss before. And she was probably about my age that I am now at the time, maybe a little bit younger even. And that struck me. And so now here I am. I've been in full-time ministry for 17 years. And 14 of those years, a woman has been my boss. And most women can't say that. But I have been fortunate to be mentored and led by 4 really amazing women. Frances Lucas, who is the president of Millsaps, Bishop Ward, who is the bishop of the Mississippi Conference that I worked with when I was in ministerial services. And then here at Emory, Susan Henry Crow and Bridgette Young-Ross. And I've never questioned whether women were called to ministry. As I, take this position in a historic way, I'm keenly aware and really grateful for the shoulders on which I stand. And I can only hope that I will be a mentor and a model for young women at SMU in the years ahead.
Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your clearly very busy and going to continue to be busy for a while schedule. So thank you so much for joining us today. And for those who want more information on Reverend Gardner's journey and things going on as she transitions to SMU, there is going to be a link that you can click on that goes into more detail about that. Peace and blessings.